Welcome everybody. Welcome back everybody to another episode of the Muppet Show. Wait, wrong podcast.
Wait.
Sorry. Let me try that again. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Dragonus Podcastus. I am your host Deadponic, and I am joined once again by the lovely Queen Byron, who is not feeling the greatest. So we're gonna give her a little bit of a break. And so we're going to continue with part 2 of the Sisters of Valkyria lore. So we only have 2 other ladies to get through, but we're also going to quickly talk about the organizational structure and some of their philosophies and how they conduct themselves in battle. So our next sister that we are going to be talking about is Lady Mia. Lady Mia is the oddest out of the group of ladies, but she still commands high respect. She is the keeper of knowledge in the Torah Grand Archive and the Black Archive. You ever want to find out something about anything, she can find a scroll or book on it for you. And that's just because she is a librarian and a book nerd does not mean she is not incapable of fighting. Far from it. She always keeps up her skills. And her role as keeper is very important to her because without knowledge, we don't know what we're fighting and we don't know how to defeat it. And she has a pet parrot named Oscar, and her favorite pastime is performing arts and, believe it or not, music, which ties into her artifact that she has, which is known as the Oracle's Lyre. Now, for those of you who don't know what a lyre is, it's basically kind of like a little version of a harp. Or it's basically a harp, but it's much smaller. And since she put points into my version, my rework of the Bard class, the Oracle's Lyre lets her cast up to 3 music for free, and by strumming a specific tune, which, believe it or not, is the tune of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Don't ask me why, but when she does that, she gets back a music that she's already cast, or she can use a new one and use that particular one for free. And she is also she's also part archaeologist too. Like, she goes out and studies ancient artifacts, and also she is only one of few people who can read ancient Sumerian, and she also has another. She actually keeps in her possession at all times a scroll that the language is said to be is evil and cursed and is not to be uttered at all in any capacity. Nobody knows why, but basically, you try to speak the language, bad things happen. And so she has to keep that scroll on her at all times, and she's the only one who can realistically protect it because she's good at her job. And I will not try to utter the ancient tongue because I think we'll save that for another episode. But basically, it involves a certain Disney villain whose name I will not say out loud because of the Voldemort effect. Anyway, and our final lady is Lady Suzanna. She's the main archaeologist and crypt explorer of the Sisters of Valkyria. She loves adventure. She never backs down from a challenge. She loves like going to mountain ranges and hills and ancient watchtowers and forts. And she loves exploring ancient ruins and crypts. And her main goal is basically much like Lady Mia with keeping that ancient scroll out of the wrong hands. Her job is making sure that ancient artifacts that are buried within the ancient ruins and crypts they stay there and they don't fall into the wrong hands. And dealing with dark creatures, since that's something she is specifically equipped to deal with thanks to the final artifact that was gifted to her by Valkyria, which is the Ring of Naran, which is basically an insurance policy kept within a ring. So by humming the State Farm jingle, if she is ever taken by the shadow, if her soul is ever consumed by the shadow or would be consumed by the shadow, the ring actually ensures that while her body may be consumed, her soul will not, and it can allow her to reincarnate. So it's kind of like a good version of the One Ring, as odd as that is to say, and it allows her to keep all her skills, all her memories in a new body. And as an added bonus, the ring shatters and it consumes the shadow that threatens the wearer. So yeah, that's why a lot of shadow beings are, and anything that's considered, any dark creatures are basically very afraid of her. And so Lady Suzanna is actually most famous for facing down three of the Death Race and a legion, which is roughly 200 of Dementors, within one of the ancient fortresses that the Witch King of Agnos used in his campaign against the elves and humans. Uh, do you know that scene from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban where Harry realizes, oh, it's not his dad who saved him at the lake, it was actually him because
Mm-hmm.
because he went back in time, and he literally runs out and he casts a really powerful Patronus. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like that, except it's a Patronus wave, not a charm. It's a wave of pure positive energy that completely obliterated all the Dementors that were there and caused the Death Race to flee. It's really difficult. It's kind of like in The Hobbit when Lady Galadriel goes to Dol Guldur and rescues Gandalf, and she basically, for lack of a better term, bitch slaps Sauron and sends him back to Mordor.
Uh-huh.
Um, However, this conjuring this Patronus wave was not quite enough to actually purge the evil presence from the fortress. And one of her other big roles when she's not doing this is she she's actually the queen and the princess's handmaiden or lady in waiting in disguise. She takes the term secret service agent that's wearing plain clothes and quite literally does it on a completely different level. She is like, so when you see the queen and the princess walking around, you see another woman with them like holding the back of her gown or something. That's her. She does the jobs that the handmaidens would do, because we don't call them servants, because that's just, I don't call them servants. That's something that's an entirely different story. But she's just she's like that. She does that. She prepares the baths. She makes sure that the dresses fit properly and gets them into the dresses. She checks their food for poisons because she's kind of paranoid like that. But that's her duty. Um, and she's always there when the queen goes for like carriage rides around the kingdom, or when she's out in the city, like going to see the children or going to like an event. She's always there. And in fact, she's usually the one. She will be sometimes actually drive the carriage, and she is the most faithful of all of the queen and daughter's bodyguards. She is really good at her job, and so much so that she was actually considered for the Solaris Knight program, but she humbly declined because she wanted to be a sister rather than a knight. And so that's all the ladies. So now we'll talk about their philosophies and how they conduct themselves in battle. So one of their big philosophies is, and this kind of goes into that whole idea of how, like, the Amazons, for example, see like men. A good example of this would probably be either like the Justice League animated series or the first Wonder Woman movie, where they see men as kind of like a negative towards the world, and they send like Diana to kind of be like their ambassador and kind of teach men that women are just as equal as men, if not more so in some areas. And but what they believe is that men are no less than women unless you have done or said something to um, receive that label. So, for example, um, I'm actually not going to say what the actual act is because obvious reasons. But if you do that particular thing, or say you you are cruel and cowardly, or cowardly, uh, you're considered you are basically like you're basically considered a monster in that sense. And and because they allow men to join their ranks as Night Brothers, they it's not like the Amazons where they don't allow any men to basically walk in their presence. They don't treat themselves as better than men. They basically um just have a different way of conducting themselves. And sometimes they'll do the jobs um that men can't do. Like, for example, and there are certain things about um that men can't do that women can't. With and that's kind of their philosophy with that. And the way they conduct themselves in battle is that they're always ready to accept death in any capacity as long as they die honorably. And usually when a sister is killed in battle, one of the things they do is they take a leaf out of the Gondor book where they have all of her. So she's still obviously dressed in her armor, but her helmet is actually placed upon her in her hands, along with her weapon, her cape, which is dressed over her, and usually one of the ladies will usually give them like a kiss on the forehead, which is kind of like a blessing to say, "Oh, we'll see you in the next life, sister." And then they're usually either cremated, or if they don't have time for it, they'll usually bury them. Or if there just happens to be a river nearby, they'll usually send them um, along they put them in a boat and then they send them along the river until they come to a waterfall, and then they go over the waterfall, and then, well, we know what happens there. It's kind of the Boromir thing. Um, and this also kind of ties into their whole idea about like their weapons and armor. Um, and this is one example where, from what I've seen from like pictures of Valkyries, they don't have that. They don't have from their depictions. They don't have the boot plate problem, and this kind of translates into how sisters view their armor. They actually just it's one of the few times where, like, as far as I know, where a faction in D&D actually despises something that's from real life. So they despise boot plate. In fact, they actually actively go out of their way to make sure that their armor, which is usually forged by George the Dwarf or some other master's smith, does not have that boot plate. Um, and usually their weapons consist of either swords, they have daggers, they'll usually their most preferred weapon is usually the sword, but there are sisters who do wield axes, like two-handed axes, one-handed axes. They even wield halberds, and there's even one who actually wields like a giant hammer. So basically, strength-oriented weapons, they're more capable of wielding that. And they're usually, when they go into like into a big battle, they're the ones who are kind of like protecting. For the most part, they're the ones protecting the women and children. They're the protecting like the schools, the financial places, the hospitals, especially. Sisters often go to the hospitals to either help out with like um, medical treatment or to give last rites. They usually, and usually when a person passes on, they usually do the thing where they close their eyes and then they start praying. And then they'll kiss them on the forehead and then they'll leave, which is one of their things that they which is one of their things that they do, and they take great pride in that. And yeah, that's basically that's it for the notes. Oh, and as far as like powers and spells that they have, um, they mostly focus on healing powers, and they have like some protection spells. They have like very high level anti undead and anti shadow spells. They've got smite, banish evil, protection from evil spells, and they have two spells and or abilities exclusive to them, which is one is called Valkyrius Blessing, which is basically the kiss on the forehead that can be is a pre-battle spell or a last right spell. And then there's the Journey to Valhalla. So the first one, Valkyria's Blessing, is a pre-battle spell that amps up their damage output and how much damage they can actually take against almost every damage type, because it would be pretty ridiculous if they could like withstand like necrotic damage. And then Journey to Valhalla is a last rites ability, which is actually sorry, it's that kiss on the forehead thing, and that protects the target from being consumed by hell or by the shadow on their way up to Valhalla. And then finally, the only founding lady who was actually ascended to become an actual Valkyrie was Lady Miria, who's the one who's the most in tune with nature. And so when a sister is granted the ability to ascend, they are gifted very incredible powers, and they gain their wings and are the ones who greet the worthy at the gates of Valhalla. They're like, it's that joke. I think Family Guy did it where like he has a long list and he has to check you off the list, and you're like, okay, this person, all right, go ahead, and then this person, oh no, you go straight to hell, kind of thing. And and then Lady Valkyria actually prophesied, and they told the founding sisters that one day there would come a day when mortal kind will face its darkest hour, and on that day, the horns of Valhalla will sound from above. Valkyria and all the dead warriors would return to the mortal plane temporarily and aid the living in their darkest hour against the forces of evil. So yeah, that's the Sisters of Valkyria. What are your thoughts and opinions on this?
Yeah, I love the Sisters of Valkyria. I think they're amazing. I'd love to see more of their order and, you know, see more details of the different leaders and things like that they have. And, hear about their recruitment strategies. Maybe another episode sometime down the line. We could talk more about them.
Oh yeah, I intend to do another episode eventually on how they like how one becomes a sister or joins the
Hmm.
Sisters of Valkyria, which I really like this faction in particular. This was one of my proudest achievements next to Solaris Knights, and
Yeah.
I feel like D&D needs a lot, not just needs like more representation, not just for women but for every race. And I think this is a good, this is kind of the best I can do with being a man and being, you know, doing my best without, you know, trying to without it becoming sullied.
Uh-huh.
And I really, and and see, unlike like other medias, like other like depictions of like organizations of women, especially the Amazons from like say DC, the Sisters of Valkyria do not have a negative view on men. They're not like, oh, because you're a man, you can't enter the our territory. It's it's kind of one of the reasons why don't I've kind of lost for a little bit of respect for Wonder Woman. Maybe not Wonder Woman specifically, but the Amazons of Themyscira. It's because they have such a negative view on men in particular. But and speaking of Wonder Woman, I actually most of my inspiration actually comes from Wonder Woman. Specifically, I can't believe I'm saying this because this is how old I am, but I used to watch the Linda Carter version of Wonder Woman, and I love that show. I watched the '60s Batman. I watched the '60s Spider Man. I watched all those old shows, and something about Linda Carter's Wonder Woman just it it clicked with me, and I really enjoyed it. And then I watched the new Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot, and I just realized, and I see the scene where she's going over no man's land, and I think, yeah, a woman can do that. Like, this is badass. And like, where the whole alleyway scene where she and Steve are ambushed, and um, he steps in and he's protecting her, but instead she steps in and blocks the bullet, and she kicks a lot of ass. And
Mm.
I really enjoy it. For some reason, I just really like Wonder Woman. I've always wanted to do the thing where the sisters will like transform into their armor and they do the Wonder Woman spin. Just because I've always wanted to do that. And I also got my inspiration, believe it or not, from another odd source. I actually got it from Margaret Houlihan, aka Hot Lips, from the show MASH. I love MASH.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love MASH. Yeah, I like Margaret, and so yeah, I like a lot of I like MASH quite a bit. It's quirky, it's funny, and there's a lot of good there's a lot of good moments in that show. And I'm trying to think. There was another. Kim Possible was another big inspiration for me.
Hmm.
I used to watch a lot of these shows where like there was like a female protagonist. I really like those shows in particular. I don't know why, but back in my time, back when I was younger, it was considered to be improper for a guy to watch a show that with the woman as the protagonist. But now it's accepted, which I think is a good thing. And like I used to watch Dora the Explorer with my sister, and I got teased for that. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, come on, it's Dora, and that's how I learned most of my Spanish. Actually, I should think about putting Dora in there somewhere. Nah, it wouldn't work. Anyway, uh, any last words before we wrap up and I announce what we're going to be doing next week?
Oh, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah. Next week we're actually going to be doing our little role play session, and then we will decide from there what we're going to do next. I may keep you in the dark. I may give you some hints, and we're actually going to start the bingo card finally. Once I get that up and running, and I'll send you a copy of that. Don't worry. And then you guys can follow along, and then we can also play Wheel of Fortune.
Nice.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next week as per usual. See you later.
Bye.